first time I brought the wrong clothes. First time I'm upset.
So what'd you order last night?
I had a small fillet.
Small fillet.
And they kept bringing too much food.
Yeah.
It was very good.
What's the status of the North End Zone?
Well, every day gets closer and closer to being able to put people in it. It's phenomenal. I don't know how many of you have been in there to see it, but it truly does close in that North End Zone. The club area is going to be fantastic, and really, you might recall when we first set out, it was all about trying to improve the fan experience. You know, more leg room, more seat room, more restrooms, more concession stands. So in year one, we're just going to ask for a little patience. The seats will be in. You'll be able to sit and watch the game. The good news is they're selling really well. The club is virtually sold out. There's a few left. The Ironman boxes are long sold out. So it's going to be a great experience, but in year one, patience is going to be the virtue, because restrooms and concession stands will be temporary. But I'm really excited. I think the sound is going to be louder. It's just going to feel more closed in, and you know, the icing on the cake is we got a Tiger Hawk on the water tower. So all is good so far.
Gary, multiple players from opposing teams have said Kinnick is the toughest environment they've ever played in because of how close the fans are. Do you expect this to even improve with this North End Zone, make that even more?
I've heard that, and I've heard people say that a lot over the years. I still start with, one of the reasons it's one of the toughest places to play is because our fans are so passionate, so loyal, so loud, but they're also right on top of the field. And if you notice, if you've been out to the North End Zone, we took the shift and went from about this to this, so it's just closer and it's higher. And so yeah, I think it's going to add to an already historic experience.
So when are you going to do that with the South End Zone? Kidding.
The South End Zone, we already renovated the South.
I'm joking.
I think that'll be the next athletic director's.
And the next sports writer's job to cover, guys. Exactly.
70,000 was a big number for you guys. I think I saw 69.2 something was the official capacity now. How difficult was it to bite that bullet?
Starting out, you know, there was some sense of wanting to stay at 70 just because it's a nice round number. I think, you know, from a round number standpoint, we can still say 70, but you're right, it dips slightly below. I think a couple of things. One, at the end of the day, it was more important that the fan experience was improved, so having to go down a little bit was worth the exchange for the fan experience. Number two, we'll still be able to remain in the top 25 in attendance in the country. That was important to me. And then finally, I had a meeting with the stadium architects. The two corners on the South End Zone, if we ever want to or need to expand, there's a logical way to create more seats in the south corners. Again, that's not probably going to be in my tenure, but it is something that's available if we need it. I think you know, fan experience is going to be better. And if we get to the point where every ticket is sold and we need to expand, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Do you guys have I know the tax thing has changed things and the donations. Have you guys started to feel that yet?
I think nationally, we're all starting to, you know, trying to figure it out. So far,
right.
Knock on wood, the numbers still look great. Fans are still contributing at a high rate. Ticket sales are ahead of where they were a year ago. So the enthusiasm's there. I do think over time we'll have to figure out how. Right now, fans are just trying to figure out how to make the adjustment. We're trying to figure out how to make the adjustment. But in the short run, fortunately, our fan base is still all in.
Were there any agreements reached yesterday with the ADs regarding future scheduling and more rotation, first of all, rather than good team versus good team, and then second of all, regarding the future of the Black Friday game?
So we're getting very close. We had good discussions about it. To your point, you know, how do we best move forward in terms of matchups and West and East and the crossover games? We're very close to finalizing the announcement. I'm not the one that's going to make it. I'll let Commissioner Delaney make that announcement when the time is right. But I feel good about the future, and as you've heard, the Nebraska game is something that Kirk and I have always been interested in continuing. I think the new regime at Nebraska is interested, so it looks like that's a good possibility, but again, we'll have to wait and see when that gets finalized.
There was a lot of talk yesterday about the perceived imbalance between the East and the West. Is that something that ever comes up when the ADs sit down and talk?
the answer to your direct question about does it come up when the ADs talk, the answer is no. I know every year when I look at our schedule, and we did talk about what those future schedules would look like, we're going to have challenging teams in front of us. I look right now at our opening game in the Big Ten. Wisconsin's going to be one of the best teams in the country, and that's who we open against. Go down the list of all the people, as Kirk said just a moment ago, there's not a team on there that we look past. And so I really don't concern myself. And at the end of the day, because we have a championship game at the end of the season, the two best teams in each division get a chance to square off. And so no, it's not something I dwell on or think about, because I know I'm going to have to play a lot of the teams. We're going to have to play a lot of the teams across the division. And our own division is tough enough to start with.
When you go to the table for the scheduling topic, what are you advocating for Iowa? What type of schedule do you guys want to see?
I don't advocate for anything in particular. Again, I know what the West is made up of, so I know what we're going to face in the West. I do like the discussion of a good rotation through the other side of the division. So I'm real comfortable with the discussions we've been having, and that person just lost their job. The crossover, the competitiveness of the crossover, I'm comfortable with where we're headed so far.
Okay, but you guys played Penn State 6 straight years, for example. Is that a good arrangement for you guys? Or
what I like about what we've been talking about is there are going to be some unique matchups because of the fact that we don't have an exact even number. But what I like about it is it's going to be random. It's not going to be somehow, taking our school and Penn State or some other matchup and saying that's what's going to happen. We're going to do it in more of a random crossover nature. And so if it does happen, it'll be fair, the most fair way to do it. So there's no reason to advocate for a particular team. It's really just making sure the process is as fair as it can be, and I feel good about that.
What about the notion of no divisions? And you have maybe 2 or 3 protected rivals, and then the rest of it rotates. Does that fit in any?
So we had the Legends leaders. We had we've tried different things. Here's what selfishly at Iowa I like. I like playing all of our border schools. Mm-hmm. I like playing Minnesota and Nebraska and Northwestern and Illinois, and I'm going to miss somebody in there, but you get my point. I like for our fans. I think it creates more energy and excitement. So selfishly, I like the fact that we have an East-West, and Wisconsin, I left them out. Maybe that was a faux pas because I don't want to have to face them in the first game. But I like that for our fans. I like the energy that it brings to college football for us regionally. And then the crossover games are great. Kinnick Stadium against Penn State and Ohio State last year was magical, even though we won one and lost one. The environment for college football is so I like the way it is. And some of that's selfish.
Yeah. So are you saying that after 2021 that the consistent crossover opponent that's going away?
No, I didn't say that.
Okay.
I say we've come up with a system that I think has a combination of matchups and randomness that I think. And again, I'm not going to go into detail, but I like the way we ended up, where we ended up, and how it's going to be going forward. Maybe after they're announced, I can share with you more of the breakdown. But I like the way we've come at it, and we're going to go about it.
What pushed that re-examination?
Just when you deal with scheduling, literally, I think one of our schedulers said there was more than 1 billion possibilities, combinations. So you're looking at what are some of the principles and parameters. Not having more than 2 games on the road in a row, or those types of things. It just takes so much to get what's the most fair to the most people and the most competitive equity. And again, it's never going to be perfect because of the number of teams we have, but I really like where we're headed and where we're headed. So it's just good common sense discussions about what's the best way to move forward.
Hey Gary, did the previous Nebraska regime just flat call you and say we're not going to play the Black Friday anymore?
Oh no, it wasn't like that. It was just ongoing discussions about what they thought they wanted, what they thought was best. We had good discussions back and forth. We kind of landed on a compromise where we were going to, wherever the home game was, that school would be able to decide if it was on the Friday or the Saturday. That was kind of our compromise in the interim. And in the meantime, the schedules had to be set, so that ended up getting rotated. And now, from 22 on, we're going to rotate it again. So it wasn't a an ultimatum. It was just a discussion about, going forward, what are we going to do?
Have you discussed like what the SEC does, like putting like almost an FCS or 10 game toward the end of the season in the Big Ten? Is that
We haven't discussed now.
When you look at the kind of the explosion of recruiting costs and staffs, has anything been discussed there about curtailing it or at least limiting it among the schools?
There have been a lot of national discussions about the growth of football staffs, and my personal opinion is that I think you can end up having too many people because you have to be responsible for and accountable for every person that's out there doing things, and from a compliance standpoint and from a really just an efficiency standpoint, I think it can go too far. There hasn't been any, absolute, we're going to put a cap on the number of people. That hasn't been agreed upon. But I do think at some point, too many is probably too many, but we'll see where it goes.
What about the financials? I'm sorry. The financials regarding recruiting costs. They have grown significantly over the years. In what ways, how do you guys register some of those recruiting costs? And then also, at the Big Ten level, there hasn't been any discussion regarding that.
So just a couple of generic ways to respond to that. First of all, if you look at the costs in college sports in general across the board have gone up significantly. I think eventually we have to figure out what's sustainable and what's not sustainable. When it comes to recruiting, to me, that's the most important thing a coach does in any sport. And so we work as hard as we can to tell our coaches, there are ceilings on how much we can spend, but we don't want to limit your budget for recruiting if we have to take it from somewhere else. So our coaches know that we're very supportive of a pretty aggressive recruiting budget. Again, it doesn't mean we're going to allow them to be wasteful, but we know it's the most important thing they do. Men's and women's sports, football to golf to tennis to basketball, we're pushing our coaches to work whatever they need in recruiting to a point we're going to provide.
Where is Iowa with its apparel deal with Nike, and does it compare with other Big Tens, like say Wisconsin? I think Wisconsin Under Armour or Adidas, I can't remember which. Under Armour?
Yeah, we've had so one of the things about the University of Iowa, first of all, our Nike contract is out a ways yet.
Okay.
I think we redid it 3 or 4 years ago. As you all know, we've been with Nike for a long time. That in and of itself doesn't mean we're going to be with them forever. They have to be competitive. They have been a great partner. And one of the things that you've seen in me, you've seen in the University of Iowa is consistency. When you have somebody that you trust and you have somebody that's been a good partner, Nike meets that criteria. Now that said, they still have to answer the bell. And so yes, our partnership, our contract is competitive. It's not the highest, it's not the lowest, but I feel very comfortable and really appreciate and enjoy our partnership with Nike.
Oklahoma State announced last week that they're going to start selling beer at T-Mobile Pickett Stadium. How often do you hear from fans about alcohol availability to the general public at Kinnick?
So it's something that obviously I watch, I keep an eye on. It's something that maybe 10 years ago would have been considered off the table completely. It's something that, again, fan experience. What's going to give our fans the best experience? One of the things we worked hard at, and I think we've had better success, is the environment in and around Kinnick Stadium related to the use of alcohol is better today than it was 10 or 15 years ago. We have less arrests, we have less issues in the stadium, we're kicking fewer people out. That's a starting point, that's awesome. What happens going forward if the country continues to see schools adding the sale of alcohol? We won't be the first. We probably won't be the last to do it. I'm not, this isn't breaking news. We don't have plans to do it. If we do it at some point, it's going to be primarily motivated by fan experience and not some sort of ability to make more money. We would see an uptick in resources and revenue, but if we ever do it, it won't be for that reason. It would be just because the fan experience is demanding it, because it's happening in other college stadiums around the country.
How are you approaching the legalization of gambling?
Well, gambling has always been a concern. Since I got involved in this business 30 years ago, it's something I remember as a student athlete, sitting in front of the opening meeting and being talked to about, don't do this, and don't tell people about injuries, and don't be involved in pools, and whether it's your sport or another sport. So even when I was a student athlete, it was top of mind awareness. The difference now is that it used to be just people who were willing to break the law that were involved in it. Now, the average person doesn't have to break the law and will have access to it at some point. The state of Iowa doesn't yet have that, but if it ever does become in Iowa, or it's more often or more available around the country. So it's just going to be a finer tuned educational process, but we've been concerned about it forever. The injury report is something we're trying to figure out as a country. In college football, there's no standard of how you have to report your injuries. In the NFL, there is. It feels like we're moving closer towards some sort of common ground. The thing we have to be more aware of is federal regulations related to student-athlete privacy. So we just have to figure out where to land competitive, the student-athlete's well-being, and how we manage that. But it's something obviously high on our radar, but it's always been an area where we've been concerned about. We're just going to have to amp up our education.
Kirk is the longest tenured coach in the country. You know what he's going to do at some point this season. You and he are also the longest tenured AD coach combo. How do you characterize your relationship with Kirk over the last 13 seasons?
Well, we have an employer-employee relationship. As a student-athlete and now in the business for 30 years, I've worked with dozens or hundreds of football coaches. I've said this before when we weren't having as much success. I've said it when we've had great success in football. He, in my opinion, if not the best, is one of the best coaches in the country. And I say that because, one, he's proven that he knows how to win. And you have to win at this level. But beyond that, just great humility, great integrity, incredible passion, work ethic. He's the perfect fit in our Win, Graduate, Do It Right. So heading into his 20th year, I hope someday we're talking about his 25th or his 30th year. But right now, for 2018, I've never seen him more focused, more energized, and more excited and ready to go. And thankfully, we share a great relationship. We meet regularly, we talk regularly. In addition to having that working relationship, I would consider him a friend as well.
You said we're here for football, so how do you obviously feel pretty strongly, positively about Kirk, but just state of the program-wise, what do you like? It seems like you like what's going on. What specifically do you like what's going on in football with Kirk?
I like the fact that our foundation is rock solid. There's going to be ups and downs in any endeavor, and in college sports especially, there's going to be ups and downs. But when you have a strong foundation of value, competitively, academically, ethically, you know that you have a chance. We have a chance every year when we come to this meeting to say we can compete for a championship. And that's one of the things I need and want in every program, and Kirk has established that. It doesn't mean we're going to win the championship every year. In fact, it's hard as heck to win a championship. But foundationally, I know we always have a chance. And I know our student athletes are going to graduate at a high rate. And I know that off the field socially, first of all, they're going to be a great group. Occasionally, when one makes a mistake, we're going to deal with it and move forward.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everybody.